Hey, Jerry.
Hey Rob, how are you?
I'm very good. Very good indeed.
Nice, nice. How's the weather there? Getting better?
Um, yeah, it's spring, and we've had some days which were, what would we say, about 70. And then last night there was probably a frost in a few places.
Frost, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't have to ever have to scrape my windshields again. I'm glad about that.
Yeah. You could just park in the garage, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well said. Um, so this is, I tell you, I've had an interesting week. I've been, emailing back with Gary and Jessica, and for me, I think the just the Joshua teachings this week, I've just really sort of fell back on him and trying to rely on a little bit more. I've kind of felt like I was becoming trapped in the illusion again, and I don't know. I was just found myself scrolling through Twitter and Instagram, and seeing all of these sort of very hate-filled or fear-filled posts, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden I just felt myself, and I actually woke up when like the middle of the night this week, which is when I emailed Gary and Jessica. I got like a little panic attack on like owing money, right? We're going through some taxes again, and this, once again, I've had this manifestation event now like 12 times
Right.
about owing money, right, to for taxes and doing this. And it's like it got to the point where it's like got my account and got everything taken care of, and we're supposed to be on auto pay, right? So I'm just like, get it out of my sight. Well, the auto pay hasn't clicked in, so every like 2 weeks I get a letter from different tax agencies, and I have to manually go in and pay what we've agreed to pay, although we've
Right.
set up the right. So I'm like, oh my god, like even the automatic payments haven't clicked
Right.
in. And
Okay.
I'm like, and I'm like, why? I'm like, okay. And I went through and I spent, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 hours doing a manifestation event the other morning, a form, and then I did some stuff with Gary. But man, it's like it's Thursday. It's been a long week.
Yeah. That seems to be, well, when it comes to major limiting beliefs and blockages, energy blockages in our lives. And for some people, it's money, and for some people, it's finding romantic love that meets their criteria, whatever it might be, the biggies, you might say. For some people, it's health and diet and weight and all that stuff. But many of us get one real biggie, and we look at it from one side and we think we got it sorted, and then we look around the corner and it's not sorted, and it goes on, and you think, how long can this go on for? Like, why does this go on so long, and how can I bring this thing to a conclusion? I get why I've been exploring this, but man, I've really had enough. I'm more than fatigued exploring the same thing again and again and again. And I think part of it is that at a very deep level, we have to truly believe that message that Joshua was talking about, to that question I asked the other day, that we created everything, and also to truly become a vibrational match to the thing that you want, and to have real desires, not our kind of imaginary desires. Like it was wonderful having millions of dollars, and the lottery here this weekend is maybe 20 million bucks. And in the past, to me, it was like, right, if I could have 50 or 100, that would be awesome. $1 million, I mean. But I think about 20 and I think, well, what would I actually do with that 20 million? And I played that as a game, but really now it's like, oh, actually, I don't want to put the universe off the idea, but I don't need 20 million. Like, if the universe wants to give me 20 million on Saturday, I'm all in, right? But to be honest, I don't need 20 million. Like, it would help out one or two family members. I might buy my sister a electric or even, hybrid car or something that she probably wouldn't think of herself, with self parking and all that. But what's that? That's a tiny amount of money. Would probably help the next generation buy a house, some of them. So that's a bit of money. And then would help a couple of very close friends in India who are amazing people. But 20 million, like where we live, like in the big city here, Auckland, houses are very expensive. But where we live in this in the South Island, what, like $2 million house in Auckland is nothing, but in 2 million in South Island, you can buy an incredible place and probably a lot of land as well. So it's like, Yeah, okay. I don't actually need 20 million, but just in case the universe wants to give it to me, I'm sure I could find a really good way to distribute and use that money to, for the betterment of all. But anyway, my point is that it's about real desires, right? And then I sort of got down to it. It's like, well, once I'd given up all that status and ego and all that other stuff around money and the fact, like you, I was accustomed to making it in the status and power and opportunities and freedom, or freedom and constraints that it gives you, then it's like, well, what do I really want? I don't want to be in debt, and I don't want to have problems with the IRS or the state tax authorities or anything like that, because that's just plain stressful, and those guys have such blanket powers. So we don't want to be in that position. But it is a deep one, and I've explored it from all angles and all ends like you, and I feel like I'm finally making headway in an authentic way, right? Not the effort and struggle and battling way, having to sell stuff and make people do stuff and all that kind of thing, but now just attracting the kinds of clients and the kinds of opportunities and online course ideas and everything else just seem to be flowing. I'm not quite sure. I want to be able to tell you what changed, so I can give you a piece of information, you can plug it in and click the switch and you're off, right? But our journeys don't quite work that way, do they? So I'm sure that was interesting, but of no use to you, right?
No, it is. It's nice. It's always nice, right? Because all we have to offer each other is our experience, right? I mean, there is no truth. We know that. There are conversations in love and there are conversations in fear. You and I can read the same article and we can have two different opinions and they'll both be right, right? I could take it as, I could see the new tax law and be in fear of it, or I could see the new tax law and go, okay, doesn't apply to me. Who cares? Right. I mean, this is, I had this conversation when, I know you and I have discussed this. There is no truth. Everybody's always looking for a fact or a truth or this. And like, there is none. There's either conversation in fear or conversation in love. And it's, if you break it down that way, and everything I was doing, I was just in fear. I was in fear of these new tax laws. I mean, in the United States, it's insane. Like what, all these new things that are popping up. And I'm like, wait a minute, these don't even apply to me. Like, who cares?
Right.
But I'm getting worked up and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I'm like, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. Like you may perceive it as a loss of freedom or an onerous thing, but then on the other hand, like, does this actually apply to me or is it just a thought? Doesn't apply to me, it's just a thought. Yeah, as you say, there are no truths as such, that beliefs that we hold are either limiting or empowering. That's it. That's quite a hard concept for people to get to, but I can see it.
People don't want to. Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, she was telling me, and I said, she's like, well, that's just a fact, and I'm like, okay, but that isn't that's your fact. Like there is no truth. There are no facts. Like, I mean, aren't we being shown this right now during this situation, this global situation, right? Where one side says X and the other side says Y, and they're both emphatically right. I'm like, okay, it proves to us that is only in fear and in love.
Yeah. Well, that is true. The COVID pandemic has really brought that to the fore. And people have very strong opinions, but even on a kind of a purely rational scientific basis, many opinions, it's too early to say what is the best strategy. And then even when you do have all the data later on, you still have to say, well, that is the best strategy if the following things were important to you. So like in New Zealand, apparently we're a tiny country, right? 5 million. We normally, for normal flu, we have 500 flu deaths per year, and we've had almost none. And we've had maybe 30 COVID deaths, right? So we've had less than 100 flu deaths, including COVID, whereas normally 500 people would have died of the normal flu. And but the argument was the health system will be overwhelmed, so we shut the borders, and then it goes on and on. It's like, well, the path we have taken is quite different to the rest of the world, and it's got some pluses and some minuses, and minuses are now becoming more apparent after a year ago it was meant to be a rock star situation, none of which I believed really. And part of it comes down to, well, how many deaths are you prepared to accept in exchange for people's freedom and mental health and the economy and all that sort of stuff. But I don't actually have a firm view on it all, but
But that's the
it's obvious
question.
the thinking has changed.
Right. But that's a question posed in fear, right? When that question gets posed, and we're in the same spot you are, right? Where we're being asked that same question. But is that really the proper question? I have no idea. But it's the question posed in fear. As we know, 38 million people die of the flu a year, right? Worldwide. Like 38 million people haven't died of the flu or of COVID combined. So to your point, is the question which they do ask, how many deaths are worth it? I'm like, or is it, why are we in this situation and what are we here to learn, right? And whatever we're here to learn, we're here to learn. Like I follow whatever rule our government says, I follow. Like, okay.
Well, yeah, so a topic we could touch on, which is a difficult one for a lot of people, is about death. And if we have time, there's two other things I want to touch on that I've been thinking a lot about lately. Is scientists often say that when they plug sensors into the brain, that we only use 10% of our brain. What's the other 90% doing? And just quickly, I suspect that it's creating our reality as we go, but it's not that measurable to science. And the other thing is, I realize
science doesn't know how to measure it, right? A better way to say it is science doesn't know. Science hasn't figured out how to measure that energy output, right?
And it may or may not be able to measure that one day. Maybe it will, because we measure things currently that.
Well, we will be. We started with radar. We started with. I mean, we every year we're able to measure new types of energy.
Yeah.
So to your point, you're 100% right.
I'm quite open to that, because I know people have said in the past, well, and I will come back to death in a minute. People have said in the past that, well, if you use the other 90% of brain, imagine where you would be. But it always seems silly to me to imagine that we had this brain, 90% of which was not needed, because evolution doesn't kind of go that way. If we didn't need it, we wouldn't have it. So therefore, we must be using it for something that was not obvious to us or apparent to us. And the other thing is, I wanted to talk about the world of animals and insects, and how in some ways we're above them, and we think we're just so above them in every way. But I suspect that 90% of the reality of what critters experience is invisible to us. We have no idea, and we're greatly surprised when we discover a snippet of it. But anyway, that's another story about physical reality. So
you've been talking to Jessica. She likes those. She likes the.
I've been telling her that stuff. Yeah, I have been talking to Jessica. I talk to her every week, her and Ondine, and I've been downloading those two ideas on them yesterday, in fact.
I listen, I love your idea about the 90%, and I think that's really a powerful statement. I would almost ask Joshua next week. I would ask him that question, because what you're talking about is, it goes back to, if a tree falls in a forest and doesn't make a sound, does it actually fall? If we're not able to measure the other 90%, doesn't mean, to your point, it's not working. That's a beautiful statement. And I guarantee you, most people haven't thought about it. When you talk about your original question, like, okay, if we create reality, what are we creating, and what is the universe creating? That answers that question. Well, the 90% of the brain that we can't measure, that's what it's doing all the time.
Yeah.
Like, think about that statement. Like, that's a very powerful statement, like a huge statement.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about, Joshua, something like, scientists often say that we only use 10% of our brain as measured by, electrodes or sensors on the brain, and we don't use the other 90%. But I was thinking of asking, so what's the other 90% doing? Is it creating our reality as we go, or something like that?
My God, that's a crazy great question. Crazy great question.
Yeah, so I don't want it to be like the 5-minute craziest question ever asked, the silliest question ever asked, because it might be more than a 5-minute answer. But if it was that good, they'd probably go on.
I listen, I love it. And you're the first person. So when I was going through this feeling, right, you do start to question, right? Like, am I actually creating, or am I really a victim? Right? I mean, it's that, am I a victim to outside circumstances? Am I a victim to taxes? Or am I actually creating that for me to realize something, right? For this limiting belief.
Yeah, once you get to that point. So there is that whole thing that as physics advances, we understand that reality, physical reality, that something that seems solid, that is maybe solid, maybe it's not. And it feels solid, but mostly it's relationships of vibration, really. And most of energy and particles, like, when I was at school, particles were like an atom and maybe a proton, nucleus, and electron. But then I discovered that was just the beginning. And there's way, 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 way more than that. And then I discovered that some of these things are more energy than particles. So if it's all energy and vibration, then it becomes conceivable to imagine how you might be able to create that, because we're essentially all energy workers. And then you think, oh, okay, so if everything, including money or whatever, is purely energy, then if we work in energy, even if we don't know we've been doing it or how we've been doing it, then it's like, oh, okay, well, in many levels, I did create this. And in a practical level, you could say, oh, I attracted these events for whatever reason. On another level, you can say, I actually created the universe, which is probably a bit mind-blowing for most people. So,
that's too big a statement, and that was part of what you were saying in that last, which is what made it such a great question, right? And are you ready to take that leap? And mentally, like, okay, I'm part of source, right? You started that way, which is really great. Okay, I am part of, like, well, no, you are source, and you're like, yeah, I am, but like that's a big pill to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, these are fairly advanced concepts. When I read it, Law of Attraction, some people are reasonably advanced, but most of it think that manifestation is some kind of a party trick. And it's like, okay, I've discovered LOA and now I'm going to start manifesting. And I'm going to, how do I manifest this job or this mate or this car or this salary or this house or $1 million, whatever it might be? And they imagine it's like, okay, I've just manifesting, now I'll make something. But they didn't realize that, well, actually, you've been doing that all along. You manifested everything. What you're really saying is, I would like to choose to manifest some different things. And they think it's kind of like a series of Jedi mind tricks that they can, trick the universe into giving them a whole bunch of stuff. Jackie had a really good, very succinct description of it, which I'll see if I can find as we're talking. About that whole thing about manifesting as you go. In her Evolution Pod Club, I think it was. No, okay, I will be able to find it. I think I filed it under manifesting. So it was about the idea of exactly what I said. Here it is. Jackie sighed and said, you do not need to learn how to manifest. You have been manifesting every moment of every day since the day you were born. You have created what you want from your empowered beliefs, and you have created much of what you don't want from your limited beliefs. Learn to create consciously and effectively.
Yeah, and by the way, and I've heard that statement, right? I'm sure you have too. It's great. But the question is, and I've been asking, how do you act on that? How do you execute that? Right. And when I was doing this manifestation event and it said, prove it, I struggle with the prove it false area. Right. And I sent it to Jessica and said, hey, and Gary, and said, hey, can you help me with this? But when I was writing, and I spent a few hours on this because I really want to address it and understand. And what came to me, which was sort of this analogy of like, manifesting is like a video game, and I don't play video games, right? But I played them before, and they say what's on the screen in front of you has been programmed, right? And you're either pressing the fire button all day long, click, 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 and targets appear. You don't understand where those targets come from. They come out of nowhere. They just appear, and you shoot them. And the more you're firing, more targets come. The more fear you have, more targets come, more targets come. But on the other side of the controller is a creation button, and no one touches it, and no one even comes close to it. Now, before you hit the fire button, you don't question that button's going to fire. You see yourself, you target something, you see yourself shooting it, killing it, destroying it, and then you hit the button. You've already realized that act. You know that target is going to be gone.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the creation side, we doubt, we hesitate. Oh no, it's not going to happen. So I wrote this whole thing. I'll send it to you. And it just it was sort of what I was in, and I don't, like I said, I'm not a video game guy, but it really started to understand in my life, like all I'm doing is seeing targets that I want to destroy, and more and more targets. And I keep my finger on the button and firing. And all these targets are popping up when I'm not creating and having that trust that when I press that button, I already see it. So if I'm going to make an example of, hey, I want to have a successful life, I want to have millions of dollars in the bank, right? See myself doing it, knowing that that's going to appear, then hitting the button. I kind of hit the button like, well, let's see if it happens.
Yeah.
Oh, see, it didn't happen, right? It's a whole different, in our fear-based destruction world, we don't question the fire button. I know I'm
Yeah.
going to destroy that target. On the creation side, we're like, oh, I bet this is never going to happen.
Yeah. So I mean, that's
And that's
essentially a wobble in the vibration, right? Because there's that idea that we know how to manifest an apple, right? Like to manifest an apple, I pick up my phone, you know, for a payment, or my, you know, billfold with my credit card or whatever. I get the key to the car, I drive to the store and I buy an apple. And I might have thought, oh, I can't be bothered driving or walking down to the store, and you know, it'll take 10 or 15 minutes. I have to put on a mask, you know, and scan in and all that kind of rubbish. So it's like, do I? And then you think, yeah, I really want an apple, so I'm gonna overcome those minor fears and jump in the car, go to the store, scan and put on the mask and buy an apple. And hey presto, I'm eating an apple. So we know we can do that, and we know that at the deepest level. And so everybody gets that. But
see, they don't consider that manifesting an apple.
No,
but it is,
no,
right?
Everyone thinks it's like the guru who holds their hand out and suddenly the apple appears out of nowhere, you know, that the atoms and molecules of the universe coalesce in their hand.
Because we're worried about how that manifestation, how we believe that manifestation should show up. Getting in the car, going to the store, that's not how I decided that should happen.
Yeah.
It should just pop out of thin air.
Yeah.
Like manifestation, the idea of a manifestation is an addition to your journey, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're sitting on the couch curled up and things just fall on you.
Yeah, well, that's right. Because Joshua said that in that answer to my question the other day, and they said about creating a house or meeting a mate, and they said, well, you attracted them. Sure, you had to say hi to the mate for the whole thing to begin, and sure, you had to write the check to buy that house that you wanted or you built, but you attracted the whole thing in the first place.
Yep, you attracted the ability that you do have a store right around you that has the freshest apples, right? That's not, people don't consider that. And that's where I'm struggling, especially with like, why am I bringing these things to me? And I kind of, and I'm keep coming to the point that I'm at a tipping point, right? That, and you and I have discussed this, right? Where it's like, well, if I had $10 million in my hand right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You know, I may be out doing something stupid.
Right. So part of it, which is also hard to do, is to actually live and act and believe in terms of feelings and thoughts, and vibration, as if you had that $10 million. So like, let's imagine that how I would feel if I won that 20 million in the lottery tomorrow. You know, same thing for you, right? If you suddenly had $10 million in the bank sitting there, and like, how would I feel? And well, that's just a feeling. And I might feel more worthy, I might feel more authoritative, or I might feel more valid, or something, whatever you want to call it. But well, clearly that's a fiction, because none of those things are true. The money didn't make you those things, but they enabled you to get more in alignment with your inner self in terms of how you view yourself. And it is that profound difficulty that most of us have of accepting our magnificence, I suppose. And there are some great quotes, is it Marianne Williamson, who says that, you know, we have the greatest trouble accepting our magnificence, which is really another take on we're all exploring unworthiness. So I do believe, from where I've got to now, that it is a matter of wobbles in the vibration as to why. It's like I often have said, it's like flying a helicopter when you don't know what you're doing, that they're not intuitive like a plane, right? If you sit on a plane, like a Cessna or a Piper or something, you know, you do this, you do this, you do that, you do that. And, you know, it's really obvious, like it's intuitive, and it's an analog experience that the control does something obvious, you know, left goes left and right goes right and all that sort of thing. But a helicopter, those things don't make any sense at all. And, you know, they're that thing, that collective or whatever, and you can move sticks all over the place. And it's like, am I going up, down, sideways? Am I going to crash? What? So to me, it's been like the helicopter till now. It's like, oh, I'm going up and I'm going forwards. How did I do that? I don't know, but I like it. Oh, no, I'm going down, or I'm going sideways, or I might get into a spin. How did I do that? I don't know. But and that's about the wobble in the vibration I eventually discovered, is like, how do I get more of what I want and less of what I don't want, so that my life is like the Cessna, or, you know, not the helicopter. So it is a matter of just continue peeling away the layers on that vibration and that worthiness, I think, because I've noticed that the more I approach things like I feel I have to do at work with love rather than obligation, And the more I'm attracting the things I would rather be doing in my work, and the more I attract the kinds of clients I really want to work with, and the more interesting clients I end up working with, and the more interesting opportunities pop up completely out of nowhere. That I was talking to Ondine and Jessica, and they said, and I told them about some of my experiences, and they said, well, you should write a book about making money authentically, how to make money authentically, a book or a course. And Joshua kind of referenced that too in that question, in the answer the other day. And so all that sort of stuff just keeps happening, like more and more interesting clients and opportunities keep coming my way, and also more opportunities to make our own online courses of various kinds. So I'm attracting more and more of the work that I want, and I'm not really putting any effort. And I think I said to you the other day, I realized that, I never actually do any marketing for our own business whatsoever. Like, if I'm going to sell an online course, yeah, sure, I will make Facebook and Google ads and do some SEO and all that sort of stuff, because you've got to reach, thousands and thousands of people. But in terms of the other stuff we do, I've realized that I've, unbeknownst to myself, been attracting all of these opportunities all the time for years and years.
So it's interesting, and I love that, right? And I think that does. So there's no question that it's this vibrational connection, right? Accepting. So recently, with the group that I'm working with right now, there's been a little bit of a fallout between a couple of the people, and it's bringing down this sort of situation. And I'm like, now find myself going back down this rabbit hole. Although I'm not personally involved, the poor performance and poor attitude of one of the people, I've always, it's always been there. It's experiencing, but I just don't care. But now it's starting to drag down the rest of the group, and I find myself talking about it. And the more I find myself talking about it, the more I find it appearing. And I'm like, okay. And that's where I was having this, it's all sort of led to this panic attack. And I'm like, how did I get back into this mix, right? It's the illusion. This is this drama that is not needed, is not part. And we're talking about conversations that these things didn't happen to me. They happened to somebody else, but now I'm involved because the conversation has dragged me in, and I'm now giving my opinion. I'm now judging. I now have a vested interest, right, emotionally in this. And I find it where I'm like, oh my God. Like, how did I get myself?
Some of that is because people very strongly seek agreement. Once you understand that mechanism, you'll see it around you all the time, that people are always seeking agreement. And if you analyze even humor or irony or sarcasm, whatever things people say, a lot of the time they're just looking for someone else's agreement. So they want that validation. So there's probably a lot of people you care about who are really begging for your agreement and to get alongside with their view. And as humans, it's a matter of practice, but our instinct and the way we've been brought up is like, there's somebody I quite like and they're seeking my agreement and support, so I'll give it to them. And next thing you know, you've been dragged into their current affair, which is probably why you ended up on Twitter.
Yeah, and that you're 100% right. And then the next thing was that person had said to me, I kind of feel like I'm alone here. You've said you're going to have a conversation, but you didn't. And I'm like, well, it didn't happen to me. Like, how do I have a conversation about hearsay? Right. And all of a sudden, So that person not only wants my agreement, now that person wants me in the trenches.
Yeah.
Right. Carrying that banner. And by the way, the person's probably, if you look at it, I tried to have the conversation with them of this like limiting belief about how Joshua would handle this or would address this. And the person wanted nothing to do with it. It was literally shot me down. And I was like, I get it. I said, listen, I'm here if you need me to help. So I've tried to take this, wow, I'm really sorry you're going through that. How can I be of help? And that's sort of a natural thing for me to want to do. And then when I open that door is when I get dragged in. How can I support you?
Well,
how can I help support you?
I've noticed in really gifted business leaders or sports coaches and the like, that they seem, and politicians, political party leaders, the ones who are really good as leaders, they have an ability to be able to deal with the factions, make everyone really like and admire them still, or attract that admiration and respect of everybody. Tell people like, no, you've been demoted, you're on the bench. No, you're not in charge of that project, whatever. no, your project is not approved, whatever. So they tell people the thing they don't want to hear. And when there's warring factions, they seem to have an ability to be able to retain the affection and loyalty and trust of both sides, while kind of, being the King Solomon wise judge in the middle. So I'm not saying I have that ability, but I've noticed that about successful people in those roles and realized that it can be done. It's not my particular forte, because I don't have the patience for that sort of stuff. But Joshua might say that's just fear and resistance, and maybe I need to approach it with love. But I'm sure people like that, right? And you'll see it in sports and politics too.
Yeah, there's no question, right? And it's so funny how the good thing is I see it as the illusion, right? I see it as something I don't want to be involved in. I see it as something but it's so easy. It's like stepping on an escalator. You don't even have to put any effort into it. It's just like, bam. It just fills your screen and you're there, you're involved, and you don't even know how you got there. When I do kind of feel like, when we say manifesting is effortless, right? It seems to take effort mentally, because you have to push away the illusion, right? So the effort is in pushing down the illusion versus just accepting the illusion. Hey, it is what it is. Like, okay, it's okay. And that's that kind of a realization. I kind of just answered my own question. I haven't been accepting the illusion for what it was, right? Teaching me, showing me this. And I just, through talking to you right there, I said, that's what I need to do, is just accept it. Like whatever the taxes I owe, all right, it is what it is. I'll figure it out. I'm 52. I've always figured it out. I've always been there.
So that's another reassuring belief, is to prove things wrong as well. Things have always worked out for me, even when I've had fear, even when it seemed very dire, like when you talked about in the business with countless staff and how am I going to, make the payroll on Friday or Monday, whenever it was. And I mean, many business owners, probably most, have been there and know that feeling, and it's terrifying.
I remember reading a book that said, if you don't struggle in effort as a business owner, you can't be successful. I remember this story of the guy saying he ran a business. He would literally throw up on the way to work at the end of the month, trying to make payroll. He said, literally for a year, I was throwing up on the 30th of every month, because I didn't know how to make payroll.
Yeah.
That's how much stress was in this guy's. And I read the book and I'm like, okay, that's what I have to do. This is what I have to model. Right. And I did that.
Become better at throwing up.
Yeah. Well, it's the stress and struggle, right?
Of course. Yeah. It's
now I'm in a situation.
Belief. It is a belief. Right? It's a model, right? But
it is. And you see something, to your point, you're like, okay, what is that person doing to be successful?
Yeah.
I got to do that. Right. And it's so funny. So that's like Abraham Hicks, right? It's like everything always works out for me. So I wrote a mantra it was Jerry Hicks's mantra. I want to be successful. I don't want to have to go into the office every day. I don't want to have any employees. I want to be wealthy. I want to be financially prosperous. And I had this mantra. I just want to have freedom. And I kept reading this mantra for a few months. And just recently I realized that's what I have. I don't have any employees. Everybody works in the office back in LA. I don't have anybody reporting to me. I do what I want, which is fun stuff and the marketing stuff. Like any of the drama, I'm not even involved in. Like I make a lot of money. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, wait a minute. Everything I just asked for, I got.
Yeah, but we don't realize it. We don't see it. We miss it for some reason. And we focus on the thing we imagine we don't have.
Because I thought it was going to happen a certain way. It happened this way.
That's right. It does happen quite differently. Like about whatever it was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we decided to see if we could live as digital nomads. And we went to India, and we lived mostly in India for 5 years until COVID, but also spent an entire summer in the southwest of France and traveled extensively throughout Europe, UK, USA. And it was amazing. And, we sold a lot of assets before we did that, which a lot of people find terrifying, especially at our age. But on the other hand, the freedom, instead of having 3 houses and 5 cars and a motorbike and, blah, 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 all that stuff, instead of having that, like the freedom and the free time and stuff, it's actually quite incredible. And then I realized that we did have an office and staff, and we decided, there's some very, very clever guy. He was a IT guy we seconded from KPMG, Zahid. He became a very good friend. And one day he said to me, "Why do you have an office?" And I said, "Oh, because I've always had an office." I said, "Very good question." And so not long after that, we didn't have an office anymore. So, and he was also the reason we went to India. So then we write with the staff were a hassle, you know, they were like, and I guess, you know, it's what you attract, but so many of them are like children that, you know, that it was like, I don't really want to be your dad. Okay. Anyway, so long story short, we end up that we don't have to go into the office. We can work or not work whenever we like. We can work from anywhere we like. We don't have any staff. We have contractors around the world who are just wonderful. And it's like, well, okay, most of these boxes are ticked. And I know that if I focus on what I want to do and push past some fear, then I will generate an income to do some more of the things that I want to do. Like, it's all there in front of me. And it's only if there's anything in that mix which is not quite what I want, then I realize, well, I created all of that lot so I can do the rest.
Yeah, you know, I'm sort of taking a deep breath and grateful that I'm able to recognize where I am.
Yeah.
I'm almost judging myself for getting back into the illusion and participating in the drama, and just say, hey, you know, and I think that event, that's an event that I can process in my head and go, okay, you don't need to be there. Like, this is not for you. You don't need to jump into this, right?
Yeah.
This is not what you want. This means nothing to
So
you.
You can reframe that though. So instead of judging yourself for slipping back into the illusion, you can look at that and say, oh, there's still a limiting belief there. So therefore I've attracted another manifestation event to identify that limiting belief. Awesome. That's good work, Jerry. Well done, my friend.
Yeah.
There is a limiting belief there. It's preventing me from moving to where I want to. I'm re-exploring this stuff in order to discover it, find the limiting belief, and let's move on.
Right. And the limiting belief is that I need other people to be successful, right? There's, in my mind, it's like, you know, I constantly I like partnering. It's a safe way to partner with people, right? To be able to rely, but that ends up blowing up. Everybody I partner with ends up becoming a psycho. I partner with people that I ended up in jail. I partner with people that ended up in fraud lawsuits. I've ended up with people that I have gotten, you know, cancer because they're freaking, you know, cancer of the tongue because they told so many lies. Partner with people that are literally have created an environment where there's 80% turnover. And I'm like, I'm a passionate guy, but I'm not an ass. Like,
Right.
I don't piss people off.
So it is possible to conclude that you don't need partnerships, and you turn them into what they were in order to prove to yourself, but it's taken you a long time to listen to yourself.
Right. I still don't have that full trust just to go out and do it.
Right. So that's the fundamental limiting belief. Yeah, I understand that. Yep.
And that is it. I mean, that's that's why I'm worried about like taxes. Once I got somebody else coming after me, it's like this fear. I'm not worthy. I'm not capable. I'm not validated. You know, I'm not part of the privileged class, right? All those things are just all come back up into this. I'm not worthy, right? Which is what you were. It's that the most enjoyed ride at the amusement park.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, Joshua has said that. It's a classic quote. I think that if the physical reality was an amusement park, then worthiness and lack would be the two most popular rides. Yeah,
right. And I had a really interesting situation last week where the guy that bought my old company from me, you know, we become very friendly, and he hit some rough times, and he asked me, hey, would you like to buy back in? And I'm like, no, I'm out, I'm done. And he had said to me, and I said, well, tell me what's going on. And we had a conversation, and I gave him some ideas, and he actually said to me, he's like, you sound like you're a scam artist, like you're a con artist. Why you? I'm like, I said to the guy, I'm like, I'm not asking you for any money. I just gave you a couple of ideas. He's like, those are con artist ideas. And I was like, okay, you don't have to take them. And I would have been offended. I would have been angry. I'm like, all right. I'm like, and I knew, because he had said to me, I'm really not in a good place. And I said, like, do I help him, or does he just have to process this? Am I part of his manifestation out?
Well, if he asked you for help and ideas, then you gave it to him. And so, you know, I think that if somebody asks for ideas or help or whatever, then, you know, feel free to give it. But the problem that you may, or what you might have noticed, is that you're vibrating at a different level. You may as well have been speaking a foreign language or be an alien, because you just won't understand anything you say anyway. Like you must notice, I'm sure you do, as you go around now that you've been doing this work, that you say things which to you are simple and apparent, and people, it's like you didn't even say it, like they didn't hear it whatsoever, and they're just not ready for it. They're not a vibrational match to it. It's like when you read a passage in a book, like one of the Joshua books. I think you've got one behind you there, have you?
Got all of them.
Reality, yeah. So when you reread a page in that, or a page in the Ascension Experience, then a month later you think, oh my God, was that actually on that page a month ago? How did I miss this? This is just earth-shattering. And so, I mean, it's a common thing. People say you go through a book like that, you put the highlighter everywhere, and when you read it the next time, it's all the stuff you didn't highlight that resonates with you, not the stuff you did highlight. So it is that thing, is that you can give them the advice if you ask for it, but he may not comprehend it at all.
Yeah, and it was interesting. So once again, and I was in the middle, right, of sort of being drawn back into the illusion, right, reading the Twitter, reading the Instagram, starting to judge and make opinions, right, and you feel yourself getting pulled in, like you really do. It's unbelievable the effect. Like it's not like it's the ability to be drawn back in to fear is so quick.
Our fear mechanism is very powerful, and it is part of our survival instinct, and we do need to have some fear around physical danger, otherwise we'd never live long enough.
It's practical fear, right? It's practical fear
versus rational fear
versus irrational fear, right?
Because it's so powerful and important, we then take on all this other stuff, fear of events and thoughts and ideas, and make stuff up and get scared of that, which is what a worry is, right? A worry is a fabricated idea that you've decided might happen, and then unfortunately you may also attract.
So so funny you say that. So the way I sort of, and I sat up at like 4 a.m. I was meditating for 2 hours. I was having this panic attack, and then I emailed Gary and Jessica my whole manifestation event, which was like 80 pages. I was just like, right. And what really came to me was, I'm worrying about things that, first of all, have never happened.
Yeah.
First and foremost. And I put them in a screen of possibility that was so small, of my reality that was so small and so limited, without ever considering the much bigger picture of what the universe has. Like, because I didn't see a way out doesn't mean there isn't a way out.
Yeah, it may not be how you think or what you think.
So the idea of opening back up and saying, okay, it is what it is. And I'm excited to see how the universe is going to solve this. Like, I can't wait to see how the universe is going to solve this for me. Like, I know it's going to solve it.
That is a good attitude to have, is to, and as Joshua says, is to let the universe create in the most elegant manner, in brackets and parentheses, that you never imagined, potentially.
Right, and that's the other 90% of the brain you're talking about. It's creating this element that we don't even have access to it. We can't measure it. We don't know what it is. We don't know what's coming out. We can't see it, but it's there for a reason. We all know energy is being produced. We know that it is, right? That's a fact.
Well, if you think of a lot of the opportunities that have come your way over your life, or a lot of the people who you've met, who you've been pleased to meet and led to interesting things happening, if you think about the string of coincidences that occurred for that to happen, it is most unlikely. And if somebody said to you, well, later this year, this is going to happen, that this chance thing will lead to this chance thing, to another chance thing, and suddenly, next thing you know, you've got this opportunity, and you think, well, that's pretty unlikely. But when it happens, we just kind of accept it. But if you actually analyze the thread of unlikely steps that led to it, you can see that it's, it could be coincidence, but it's not, because so many good things are right this way.
So it's so funny. I'm curious about so this opportunity, and I'm enjoying running it, right? Being the CEO of this company, I enjoy it. It's so funny. I've always put a lot of value on the title. And I've got to the title where everybody's calling me, and I've taken it out of my address.
Right.
So it's so funny. I'm like, well, wait a minute. But I put so much focus to get there, got there. Once again, I created it. It happened. And I see this thing I see this, to be honest, I see this thing blowing up. The guy's out of control. He's absolutely out of control. Spending wise, emotionally, he's a mess.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, it's what the universe is giving me. Like, I still do
Yeah.
what I'm doing, and I'm on a different path. Like, he's here and I'm running a different side, but I see it all coming over. And I'm like, well, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Like, whatever happens, happens.
And just remember that you live in the land of opportunities.
Yeah. So it's so funny you say that I'm now, like, I really wanted to go see Gary next week at that, with the Joshua retreat.
Yeah.
Right. Then I ended up having like this business meeting in LA I got to fly into. And then my daughter had a homecoming, and I'm like, all right, there's too many signs saying me, this is what you should be doing, spending time with your family, which you love to do. And it's absolutely a blast to go see my daughter at college. Right. I love that. And then going to LA to meet this investor that, is potentially going to invest in. He wants to, have a conversation. I'm like, I like meeting people like that. I didn't ask for the meeting. He asked for the meeting. And I'm like, okay. So these things just popped up. And I'm like, I'm going to do these things. And I say to myself, like, I didn't ask for this opportunity. Why is this thing even happening? I'm like, all right, this must be the next step. Like, I'm looking at it. I have zero intention, like, just to go and have a good time and have a great conversation and meet great people. Like, I love that. I've never had an issue meeting people.
So a lot of people might have thought they might have got attached to the idea of going to the retreat, the Joshua retreat at Gary's place. And then when it didn't happen, it's like, damn, I really, really wanted to do that. I needed to do that. That's this, the path out of the wilderness for me, and blah, blah, blah. And instead I have to do this and I have to do that and have to do something else. So that's one way to look at it, is to get attached and to resist. But what you're saying is, oh, okay, that was plan A. Here is plan B or plan C. They're all equally valid, and it's all unfolding perfectly. So great, let's get on and do this. And if you can take that attitude, it is incredibly liberating and freeing.
It is. And then the best part is, because Gary's such an amazing guy, he's off the charts, spectacular. I had paid, and I'm like, listen, just keep it, give it to somebody or do whatever. Another guy had called me and said, hey, and I said to him, and he said, hey, I'd really like to go to this thing with Gary, but I can't afford it. I'm like, well, call him and tell him. And he said, and Gary's like, yeah, we'll donate to somebody and we'll give you a free thing over here and we'll do that. I mean, Gary's off the charts great. So, but all of these other things happened, right, with it, which is great. All these really good things happened outside of it. And it was, and I'm not like I'm being neglected. I'm having great meetings. I'm going to spend time with my family. It's not like, right. I mean, so I'm like, holy cow, like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that all these things, the way these things unfold. And I don't know if this is sort of the tipping point where, like, if I would have gotten $10 million 2 years ago, I would not be having this conversation with you.
No, you wouldn't be exploring what you're exploring. Yeah.
If I got $10 million today, you and I would still be having this conversation. Matter of fact, we would be building a little bit more of an institute. I'd get Gary, I'd get Fobbs, I'd get Gary. How do we do this? How do we blow this up? We got some money now. Let's go have fun. How do we get more people involved? Like his books are on audio. I paid to have those books on audio. Like, I would go through and like, okay, let's do this the right way. Let's really start getting this message out there to as many people as possible, right? Because I love that. I'm having fun with this.
Yeah.
Right? And I would say, okay, Gary, how do you? And obviously, this is Gary's thing, right? He may say no, but who knows? A year from now, he may say, hey, let's do these things. But I would do his 3 books on Audible. Like, okay, what does that cost? We need to do these things, Gary. Let's have fun, right? But having Gary go and speak and do a Joshua speaking, at a resort, right, which he's done before, but be able to do a little bit, a few more of those things. I think, his message, Joshua's message, is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I was talking about it with Trace yesterday about the path to scale his business, and I've observed a lot of people who've done that in various realms, but in a way, the pinnacle, apart from mass communications, the internet, websites and YouTube and so on, which he's doing, is really like one of the high points for a business opportunity, or the whatever you want to call it, because I always think about the business part of it, that is to have like the room of 5,000 people or 10,000 people who've paid, $100 or $200 a ticket. And to me, like, that is a high point as to where, because you reach so many people and then they tell other people. And also, it generates a lot of cash for him to actually grow and expand the thing. And I know Esther Hicks does a bit of a circuit. She's often in Amsterdam and other places. And I don't know what the size of those conference centers or convention centers or hotel ballrooms are, but I know she gets a lot of people. And so, yeah, I can see all of that opportunity as this message grows.
And you take that first $1 million, and what you do is you buy other people's stages, right? They call them OPS, other people's stages.
Yeah.
You go on, like, you can actually call up Tony Robbins and say, listen, I'll give you $1 million. Can I speak for 5 minutes to your 2 million people on Facebook? Like he'll allow those. I mean, he has to prove it. You have to make the same.
That's thing. Right. Yeah.
But that's what we do it, right?
Yeah. There is a story. One of my favorite guitarists of all time is Jimi Hendrix. And when he was breaking through, there is a story that he was opening as a pretty much unknown for Eric Clapton. And Eric Clapton saw what this guy was doing. It was like, holy crap, what am I going to do now? I don't know if it's true, but if it's not true, it should be true, and it could be true.
But he could do honestly on Tony's platform, on Pete Vargas, right? On any a inspired action versus forced action talk.
Yeah.
Which I think is the greatest talk that I keep wanting to develop a course based upon Joshua on this taking inspired action versus forced action. I took forced action for so long,
right,
and watched it implode on me. That the inspired action is so much more effective, right? And it's still breaking through the fear, which is Tony's, right? That's his message. You got to break through the fear.
And it's the opposite of the business owner guy who said to you, who would vomit on the way to the office, right? Like that guy. Like it's the opposite of that approach.
But that's Tony's without saying that. Tony says that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. He does. Yeah. He says that without saying it. So for Joshua to come in, Gary to come in and say, tell his story. Once again, Gary's got that story, millions and millions of dollars, all gone. Here I am. I rebuilt it. Bam, this is what I'm doing. I don't care. Pay me, don't pay me. I give a course. You pay me $5. Don't finish paying. I don't care. Like, holy cow. Who does that?
Yeah.
Tony Robbins will hold your feet to the fire. You want a thing? You got to pay me 10 grand now.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting you say that. Yeah. I've seen that. I understand what you're saying exactly. And he is unusual in that way, that he is very giving and open, and he allows it to flow, and it does. I said that we would talk about death because we talked about COVID deaths, right, and what's acceptable. So one thing that I've never really understood is that I know a lot of Christian people who believe in life after death and the resurrection of the soul and all that stuff. And in theory, they should be joyous when someone they care about dies and their soul goes to heaven to be with God and all the, the angels and all their, family who've died before them and all the rest of it. But I haven't really witnessed any Christian people rejoicing at the liberation of that soul into, eternal happiness, right? So I'm not quite sure why Christianity fails people in accepting death or even celebrating death. Because most people go into mourning and it's, oh, woe is me, I feel so bad because I missed that person. It's like, why don't you focus on what you believe about that soul rather than the pain you're feeling because you can't see them anymore? And if you really believe they're, eternally, now in eternal life, then maybe you can swap thoughts with them or whatever, or maybe that's an unchristian idea, I don't know. But so, and then I think our society has a profound and pretty much concrete terror of death. Like, death is just accepted as completely unacceptable in any context, and to the point where we bring in all these safety measures, so it gets harder and harder and harder to transition. So everybody who's ready to transition has to do something quite novel in order to, like, how am I going to do this? Like, how do I get out of here now? Like, I have a stroke and they keep me alive. This happens, and they keep me alive, and it goes on, and I have a heart attack and they fix me up, and then I get cancer and they fix me up, and instead of dying at 50, I'm going to 100. I never planned that. Anyway, well, you probably did. But so the point is that we are terrified of death. So to have a discussion about what's an acceptable number of deaths in a society or a country with COVID is not a discussion that our society can have. It's too taboo for words, right? And so it's not acceptable. Like, I know we imagine we have freedom of speech, but we don't really, because there's too many taboo subjects. They change from generation to generation. And, currently there's only one view you can have on certain topics. Climate change will be one, for example. And I'm not a climate denier or anything. I'm just observing that in our society, you can't really have anything but a particular view. But I guarantee you in 10 or 20 years' time, that view will be very passé and it won't be the view anymore, right? So anyway, for a whole lot of reasons, I'm not skeptical, but I think it's just really people like to control thoughts, and climate activists like to engender fear and then manipulate that fear for their own, political ends. So it's not to say, we don't have a climate issue, but I was observing the process and saying things that you're not allowed to say in our society. And death is one of those. So the Joshua stuff is described as a new approach to life, right? And as you probably know, Jessica's brother died. And so she's writing a book or making a course, which will be a new approach to death. So that's the Joshua concept that we're eternal. And then how do you connect with people who have passed? And with her extensive experience with the Carlos Castaneda work and all the rest of it, she has a unique insight into that. So then she said, I imagine that besides the new approach to life, the new approach to death, there will probably be somebody who will pretty shortly do the new approach to health. And I didn't say it because we're finishing a discussion on that, but it occurred to me that, well, the book or course that they suggested I write, How to Make Money Authentically, actually is a new approach to money or a new approach to abundance. So, and then I thought, it probably goes for relationships as well, that all of that material is sitting there within the work we've been doing, and actually breaking it out in that way could be very valuable. So I guess the thing I want to say about death is that if you can truly believe that you're still connected to that person, and you can, when you meditate, the thoughts that come, are you talking to them? And if you believe that we're eternal, then there is no such a thing as loss. And Joshua says that, like, loss is there is no such thing as loss. Nothing can be lost in this system. But as a society, the death thing is really a stumbling block.
It is, and it's used, to your point, it's used for people to gain power, used by the church to gain power. That's, people just learn from the church, all the different churches, how to use death and fear, right, to gain power. Because, death was like, well, you're going to go to hell. Hell doesn't exist. These are all things made up, right? Think about, and then we're at a point right now where you have people talking about religion as if it's not only the real thing for them, that there is actually somebody up there looking to do harm to people. Like, it's insane. Like, when you see, like, that's what you believe God is, like the punisher of all evil. It's judging. Death is the ultimate judge, where when people see death, and by the way, how many times have you known a guy who you didn't like, who you didn't really respect, and really caused misery in your life, that when they died, you can't speak ill of the dead.
Yeah,
that was an asshole.
Yeah, that's
true. That was his thing. He's an asshole. No, he's an asshole. He's dead. He's alive. Whatever. He's an asshole. Like, I don't really care. Like, whatever it is.
You're not allowed to say good riddance.
No, you can't say good riddance. But that guy was down there, and now we say, he was an ass, but that ass was my ass. Like, he taught me things. Like, I really learned about myself, right? About those things. But death, I my mom's going through a very serious situation, which I don't know how long she's going to have to live. But I've come to a very strong grip that I've said I'm going to have a better relationship with my mom when she transitions. There's no question. It's just, she's angry human being that is caught up in the illusion, and she literally can't break free. So our communication is always one-sided, her yelling, her angry, her disappointment, and I see that. I'm like, okay, that's all her. I finally get that, right? But I took that on for so long. And now I'm just like, all right. I said to my sister, do you care about seeing mom again? I said, no. I talk to her and wish her well and send her love every day. I don't need to see her.
Yeah.
It's a very different, and my poor dad, it's like, I get it. Like, I will have a better relationship with my parents when they transition. There's no question.
Right.
They are caught up in the illusion. They are judging every day. I have always been somebody who stepped outside the lines. I've always colored outside the lines, and I don't care. I've never cared.
Yeah. So you and I have shared that kind of rebel thing. I notice often in the news when somebody dies, especially a young person, taken too soon, as they say, that they often say, oh, so-and-so said they were such a good person and such a good guy, and da-da-da-da-da, as if to say, well, if they were an asshole, then it wouldn't be a tragedy that they died. But because this person said they were nice, they're, well, oh my God, that's such a tragedy. And I thought, well, that is kind of meaningless drivel, really, isn't it? It is just like, first of all, there's no bad or wrong. And even if you think that person was or wasn't nice, somebody's got the opposite view. But what does it matter? Like, if they're a loss, they're a loss. And if there's no loss, then there is no loss. Like, to me, it's like just playing childish games in the illusion.
It's the video game. That person's not there. There's another one pops in, right? It's just but that person's still there. And think about this too. It's society comes up with words to describe. If your husband or your wife dies, you're a widower or a widow, right? If your parents die, you're an orphan. But there are, and I heard this somewhere, but if your kids die, there's no word for that.
Right.
Think about that. Like, society is so afraid. They're so afraid.
Don't even want to name it. Yeah.
They don't.
No.
They don't. It's all fear. And nobody wants to be part of that club, right? I mean, I have kids. I mean, God forbid, but I get it. I mean, I still struggle with that. There is from a death standpoint, I have parents, right? But God forbid my kids would. Like, I even say that right now. It's like, I don't know. And I understand like what it is. I understand that there's a transition, but when it comes to your kids, that is the next sort of limiting belief I need to get through. Like, it's my brother, my sister, my parents, I have no problem embracing Joshua's teaching of it, right? This new understanding. My wife even, but my kids, I'm like, it's a big, like, that's a whole, once again, that's like taking a helicopter, dropping you out 1,000 yards, 1,000 miles offshore and saying, swim to shore. I don't get that concept yet. It's interesting, right? Well, but I can make all of those connections, but when it comes here, boom, I can't make it.
Well, death of a child, I think, is one of the hardest things to accept. However, my wife, who died a number of years ago, her son died when he was 20, a few years before I met her. She introduced me to what was then called New Age spirituality in the early 90s. And in those days, it was John Keogh, Wayne Dyer, and the Shirley MacLaine adventures, and various others. But anyway, she introduced me to all of that. And she used to have his photo little frame by the bed wherever we went, anywhere in the world. But I think she used to basically speak to him every day. Like, in her mind, she was speaking to him every day. And he died in a car accident caused by a guy who was drunken on the wrong side of the road. She actually went to see that guy and the family and basically said, I forgive you. Like, I'm not holding a grudge. And they both died. Sorry, the guy died as well. So she went to see the family, like the girlfriend and the mother, and said, I don't hold any ill against this guy for, killing my son, sort of thing. But it was very obviously, it destroyed her in some ways. But on the other hand, he was there for her. I just realized, I didn't realize this before. Whereas her ex-husband, he's still stuck in it and still, woe is me, and bemoans it, and we're talking 30 years on. He's still stuck in there, and it's all about him. Poor me, and drawing attention to himself, at the anniversary of the death. It looks like he's, honoring his son, but I think it's probably guilt because he was pretty much an abandoning type of father and wasn't much of a husband. So I think he's trying to fix his guilt, whereas she, and it's probably affected his life terribly. But for my ex-wife, I think, late wife, I should say, she actually did manage to feel like she was in touch with him every day because of her beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I never have to, come to grips with that or have to deal with that. But that is there's so much love, and that's the thing you feel, right? That it's unconditional. I mean, my kids could come and say, Dad, I hate you. You're miserable. You make my life miserable. And I just smile. I'm like, I don't feel any anger towards them. Like, never. It's just pure love. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
My wife could say that and I don't want to respond, but my kids say that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I think because you chose each other at a far deeper level.
Yeah, you're right. Now, and I think that's the bigger, right? That's the bigger picture. When you get that this is one cast you've picked, right? This experience that you're having is you've picked everybody. Is everybody's involved is your casting call.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Your soul family. Right? And some people are far more connected to you than others. Yeah.
And it is super interesting, but death is such an interesting, and when it's used, to your point, and you said this very well, when it's used for political power or for religious power, it really becomes a damaging emotion. And when you use it as a loving, right, emotion, when you use it as a part of a conversation in terms of transitioning energy and part of being able to expand, right, there is so much less attachment to it. And the idea of death right now is that everybody and all these political powers and all these people and all the religion, they have to create such an attachment to it that you feel fear, constant fear.
Yeah. Well, traditional religions like Christian religions in the West, but also most societies with their rituals, like to have prescribed behaviors around some of the most fundamental things in human existence. And I'm talking about food, that we have all these prescribed rituals around food, all cultures do, about sex and reproduction, and about death as well. So all of the kind of most crucial things of our experience, societies have rituals around, and religions have really sought to manage and explain and kind of take over responsibility for all of the, I mean, you know, religious fasting will be an example, that sort of thing. And or you know, prohibitions against eating meat or pork, or you know, or even what by our standard is more extreme is Jainism in India, for example. And you know, Jains won't eat anything that grows below the ground, as well as being vegetarian. So you know, it's all about prescribing or managing or ritualizing some of the essential things. And a cynic might say that religions use it to control people, and that may or may not be true. But it's interesting how people don't feel that they can be left to their own belief systems to work out that all food is equally good, and that you don't need somebody to explain to you food systems or death or sex for that matter, you know. And you know, think of all the rules and taboos and prescriptions around sex, for example. I mean, it's the most, our society is fixated on these crazy things. Like, this is not something like in America, the age of consent is 18, in New Zealand it's 16, in some countries I believe it's 14. And yet, you know, so 18 has become sort of the gold standard on the internet, like everything has to be 18. But you know, in traditional societies, pre-technology societies, I mean, people were reproducing at young ages, you know, because society was set up for that, but not in our world. And for some strange reason, you know, people in well-to-do countries want to have children in their 30s and 40s when you're not really built for it.
No, you're not. And well, you know, you're built for it mentally, you're not built for it physically, right? So the older I could imagine being 35 or 40 with a teenage daughter versus 52 with a teenage daughter. At 52 with a teenage daughter, I am much more relaxed than I was at 40.
Yeah.
At 40, I was very, very uptight. And, you know, obviously I think the teachings in general of Joshua and so forth, you know, play a part of that, but you have to experience life to be able to get to the point where you're open to Joshua, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to sort of run that. It's almost like, you know, you got to run through that, you know, that loop, and you just got to get there. And all those experiences, I wouldn't say they weaken you, but they open up your vision. So you finally see what's on the outskirts and you can bring them in. Right. And that's the key, is to just continue to open up your expansion, right? Where you can kind of see, oh, wait a minute, there's something else out there. It's no different than, you know, that video game analogy, where if you're using a small screen and you don't see what's off to the left or to the right, you're just adding more and more targets, right? What do you have to do to open up? And it, you know, you talk about expansion, right? Joshua talks about there's no self-improvement, it's expansion. It's just expanding your view. It's how do I grow more to see what's over here and over here versus right down. And we're all taught, right? Focus on right down the middle. Just look at what's ahead of you, right? Everybody's taught that. Right.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you just focus on that thing, then you close yourself off to opportunities. One of the things that struck me about Gary early on was that he's open to ideas and opportunities, and much more than I was, because I figured, if I'm going to make a good income, it has to be down this particular path. And I looked at him and he's like, oh yeah, this came along and that came along and something else came along. And so, and to me initially, I had this rigid thinking, and I thought, oh, how does he do that? That's pretty weird. That's pretty scary. But now I realize that it's part of that whole thing, that if you want to let the universe deliver it in the most elegant manner possible. You actually have to be open-minded to opportunities. And then you realize, oh, how many opportunities have I missed and do I miss every day? How many inspirations do I ignore or reject? And then you realize, it's all happening for me. I just need to open my mind, as you say, to play the video game on the big screen instead of the phone.
Like I keep having the experience of like making sure I put all Gary's books on Audible. Like it's like, just do it, just go and do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then I'm like, well, am I just forcing myself on the guy? Like, I mean, he didn't ask me to do it. Like, should I just, but I'm like, it's in my mind almost every day.
Yeah.
Make a phone call. Like in my entire life, by the way, I can make anything happen. I can make businesses happen. I've been successful in the sports field, business, anything. Like, and I will tell you, I came to Arizona, I created a sports club, for kids. They're champions on the West Coast, #1 team. That's what I do. It's like, I look back and I'm like, okay, I can do this all day long, but I'm like, forcing that in the past has created such explosions. Because if it's not done out of love, eventually.
Gary has talked about using taking them to Audible, and he's got close to making it happen. I thought it was maybe happening, but I agree that it would be a really good thing, because I would prefer to consume them on Audible than any other, like while I'm doing something, like mowing the lawn or something. I like listening to that stuff.
Well, reading them is like forced struggle and effort for me. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, that's true as well, because different people consume stuff in different ways, and
I consume Audible. There's no question.
Yeah.
Like,
and a lot of people like that. Yeah. No, I think it's good. And if you can help them provide that path, that would be good.
I want to, but ultimately it's coming up with, what does it cost? I mean, it's probably going to cost somewhere between, maybe it's a $5,000, right? It's okay. That's not a horrible investment. What would that increase on Audible? I'm going to figure it out what it costs. And he's got 4 books, so $20,000. So it's so funny. It's like, with money, right there, for me, every time I see money, it's just opportunities. Like, bam, $10 million. You may not know what you want to do with now, but you're like me. You'd have 100 opportunities in a heartbeat. Like you say, now I don't need anything. Well, it's not about need.
No.
Right? What is you truly desire? You may truly desire to create an environment where people just love working with you. And by the way, working with people all over the world. Like that's what you're creating right now. We work on creating this incredible work environment where people are able to work from their home, enjoy the company, right? Enjoy some growth. And wow, like how do I make that bigger? How do I get more people involved? How do I buy another company? How do I get, how do I create this to where, it's 1,000 people and everybody's sort of on their own, right? And I'm not managing anybody, but it's right. So there are those ways to do that, that come to people like you or people like me, because it's always about how to have more fun, how to get bigger, and how to get and become that platform. I always say I love the word platform. Like I love being a platform for people to create what they want. Because no one believes that they can do, like what makes you happy? Like people say, what makes you happy? Like we had kids that want to play on this team and do whatever, they don't have any money. I'm like, okay, then come. But we can't. I'm like, oh, okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about paying. Like this is a platform for kids to be able to do things.
Yeah.
It's not a way to make money. I don't care about it.
Yeah.
And same thing with you. If you had all that money, you'd be like, boom, here's my platform. Well, what does that platform do? I think we're done with the houses and the cars. I like to drive a nice car. I have fun with it, but I'm not trying to buy 5 houses anymore. I'm not trying to buy 5 cars anymore. Like been there, done that.
Yeah. So
but
with
building
that,
a platform,
with
that's
that
fun.
20 million lottery, when I don't think I'd be buying any more cars, which in the past I would have for sure. But the car we have is perfect for our requirements. It is just ideal. I've had 4 of these, and it does everything I need. It's perfect. I mean, I enjoyed driving fast, and I've done track days and had all the fast cars and blah blah, and that's a lot of fun. But I don't actually want to do track days and race on public roads anymore either.
Right. Well, those are experiences you can always have. That's the beauty.
That's right.
Of it, right?
That is true.
Yeah, you can always have it. The minute you shake your hand, I want to go drive in a same thing in Arizona. I can go drive on a track. I can go drive the fastest car I could possibly do for a fee. You can do whatever you want, right? For a fee,
that is
you can do
true.
whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, because we've done it and we're like, all right, if I want to do that again, I'm gonna. But look at all the new experiences, right? Where for me, it's like, no, stop partnering with these people that are insane, self-destructive, self-sabotaging, insane individuals that aren't happy, that create angst. Everybody I've partnered with has gotten divorced, been sued, been put in jail, I've been miserable. Like, it's insane. I'm like, how is this possible? I'm married 22 years. I'm a happy
Wow.
guy. I love my kids. I'm as easygoing as people say, oh, we're going to take a third of the company away from you. Okay. Like,
Well,
all right.
Yeah. As you say, it's a matter of taking that step of not needing partners. Yeah.
That's the next step, my friend. Today was great.
Okay.
I know we've gone on for a while, but
Yeah.
I loved your conversation on the death thing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, a lot of that comes from Jessica and the work she's doing. And I think there'll be a lot of interest in that because so many people, in theory, believe it or want to believe it, but implementing it is quite hard for a lot of people. And she's the ideal person to make that course for people. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, great. She's great.
Have a great evening.
You too, my friend. Have a great day.
Okay. See you, Drew. Bye.
Bye-bye.